10 amazing facts about gremlins. You already know the 3 rules by heart. Keep them out of the light, don't get them wet, and whatever you do, never ever feed them after midnight. For decades, those rules have defined one of the most iconic creatures in movie history. But what if the most shocking rule of all was the one the filmmakers themselves almost broke? The original script for Gremlins wasn't a quirky horror comedy. It was a dark, violent, hard R horror movie that featured decapitations, the family dog being eaten, and a full-blown massacre at a McDonald's. And that's just our first amazing fact. Today, we're uncovering everything from the movie's secret origins to the real-life folklore that started it all, long before Hollywood ever got involved. Fact number 1. Gremlins were real. To worry pilots long before Gizmo and Stripe hit the big screen, gremlins were a very real problem for pilots in Britain's Royal Air Force. The term popped up in print as early as the 1920s, but the legend really took off during the high-stakes dogfights of World War II. RAF pilots started blaming all sorts of mysterious mechanical failures on these tiny invisible troublemakers. If an engine suddenly quit, a compass went haywire, or a tool vanished, it wasn't bad engineering, it was gremlins. This wasn't just a silly superstition, it was a brilliant psychological coping mechanism. In the intense pressure of combat, blaming some mischievous, unseen creature for a technical problem was a lot better for morale than pointing fingers at your fellow airmen or the ground crew. It was a way to let off steam and maintain unity. In a weird way, these imaginary saboteurs helped keep spirits high. Fact number 2. Roald Dahl and Walt Disney almost made a Gremlins movie. The person who dragged the gremlin myth out of the barracks and into the public eye was none other than Roald Dahl. He served as an RAF pilot himself and knew the folklore well. After an injury ended his flying career, he was posted to Washington, D.C., where he wrote his very first children's book in 1943, titled The Gremlins. The story made its way to Walt Disney, who loved it and optioned it for a feature film. Dahl even spent time at the Disney studio, where the 6 feet 6 inches author was affectionately nicknamed Storky by Walt himself. Artists began designing the characters, but the project was eventually cancelled. There were production challenges and tricky copyright issues over who really owned the gremlin concept, since it was part of military folklore. Though the film never happened, the book was published by Random House and became the American public's first real introduction to the creatures. Fact number 3. The original script was a hard R horror film. Let's get back to that shocking first draft. When a young screenwriter named Chris Columbus was inspired by the sound of mice scurrying in his New York loft, he wrote Gremlins. But it wasn't the movie you know. It was a brutal, straight-up horror film. The violence was way more graphic. For instance, in the famous kitchen scene, Billy's mum, Lynn, was decapitated and her head was tossed down the stairs. Fact the family dog, Barney, Gizmo wasn't just tangled in Christmas lights. The villain. He was killed. Maybe the biggest change Spielberg made was to the hero of the chaotic scene in Dory's Tavern. In Columbus's original script, there was no cute, cuddly Mogwai sidekick. Didn't just party. The creature Billy gets ate pet. All the customers wasn't even named Gizmo. The burger was not supposed to stay cute. Executive producer Steven Spielberg, who saw the potential for a much bigger audience into the main villain. He convinced Columbus to dial back the gore that for the movie to work, more dark the audience needed a hero each horror flick into the genre-bending classic. It remain a sweet, lovable Mogwai for the entire film, acting as Billy's loyal partner. This single decision gave the movie its heart. It created the central conflict of good versus evil. Number 8 gave the audience an emotional anchor. Gizmo a mythical not origin. So coincidentally, created one of the most beloved of the marketable movie characters of all time. The 2023 animated Gremlins helped create the PG-13 rating, offered its own epic origin theaters in the summer of the 1920s. Its PG rating caused a huge mythological take on Gizmo's expecting a quirky Spielberg-produced monster movie. The Mogwai come from a hidden paradise exploding gremlins, the Valley of a man being attacked on his suggests Gizmo was created by a Chinese god story as a test for humanity, dying in a chimney dressed as Santa. Inherently good, the violence and grim themes were just too much for a PG film. Ultimate test that same summer, another Spielberg production, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom of the Mogwai, similar led to the creation of the and violent scenes. Like this lord's heart reframes Gizmo not just as a cute pet, the public outcry symbol both films was so loud that Spielberg himself came up with a solution. Number 9. He called Jack Valenti as a dark head of the Motion Picture Association of America, cute and furry creatures, and suggested a new rating between PG and R. Just 2 months after these words was released, translates to DAA introduced the PG-13 rating. In Chinese folklore, to get a Mogwai is often a vengeful spirit that wants to harm humans. Fact number 6. The puppets were a complete nightmare they can turn into. Bringing the Gremlins to life was a technical and financial chaos to come. The film used only practical effects, relying on dozens of animatronic puppets that were incredibly complex and broke down constantly the film's theme. Each of the main Gremlin puppets cost between $30,000 and $40,000 to build, a huge chunk of the film's $11 million budget. The studio was so paranoid that someone would steal them that security guards checked the trunks of every cast and crew member's car at the end of each day. The puppets, especially the Gizmo models, were so frustrating to work with that the crew started a horrible things to do to Gizmo list. That's how we got the scene where the Gremlins use him as a dartboard. At one point, things got so desperate they even considered using monkeys in gremlin costumes for the crowd scenes, but a test run with one monkey in a mask quickly proved that was a terrible, terrible idea. Fact number 7. The sequel was intentionally a wild satire. After the massive success of the first film, Warner Brothers was desperate for a sequel. But director Joe Dante was reluctant, as the first production had been exhausting. After years of failed pitches from other writers, the studio came back to Dante and gave him an offer few directors ever get: complete creative control. With a budget 3 times larger than the original, Dante decided to make a film that made fun of the very idea of sequels. Gremlins 2. The new batch is a bizarre meta-commentary on the original film, corporate greed, and Hollywood itself. Dante filled it with fourth wall breaks, parodies of movies like Rambo, and a cameo from film critic Leonard Maltin, who gets attacked by gremlins right after trashing the first movie. It also introduced a whole lineup of new, genetically modified gremlins, including the intelligent brain gremlin and a female gremlin. Though it wasn't a box office hit at the time, the film has since become a cult classic, celebrated for its bold and hilarious takedown of sequel culture.